What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO0 back with another critter format video, and today we have a bit of a jank one for you. So one of the best decks in the previous format to this, Yugi-Kaiba format, was a deck known as Soul Control, which used tribute monsters like Summon Skull combined with the spell card Soul Exchange and Change of Heart to act as removal spells while getting out big monsters on the field. Now, seeing as it was one of the best decks in Yugi-Kaiba format, it stands to reason that it would still be pretty good in Critter format. And in fact, the deck did get some additional tools to help it out, as I'll explain as I go through the deck breakdown. However, it's not really the best deck in the format anymore. I'd even say it might not even be tier 2. It is a very, very janky deck. And in order to show off how jank it is, I actually have a jank matchup with the king of jank himself, Janjo, to show you later. But before we dive into that, we've got to do the deck breakdown. So, as I said, the deck is relying on Soul Exchange plus some tribute monsters. So we're playing 2 Summon Skull and 3 Thunder Dragon. Thunder Dragon is nice because it can search out more Thunder Dragons, which both thins down the deck, making you more likely to draw into your Soul Exchanges, and also provides you 2 monsters that you can actually combine with Soul Exchange to act as removal. Yes, it does die to Logins, but you want to be using Soul Exchange as a removal tool first and foremost, so that's why I think it's okay having them in the deck. And also, one big flaw in this deck is it can brick heavily on tribute monsters. You don't generally brick as much on Soul Exchange itself alone because you have so many ways to search out tribute monsters. Witches can search you either Thunder Dragons or Summon Skull. Thunder Dragon searching out 2 more Thunder Dragons is big at providing you with more monsters to combine with Soul Exchange. So the deck thinning here actually does matter a lot, I think. I mentioned the Witches before, and Witch is an incredibly good card in this deck. It searches all your tribute monsters, which is very important. And we're also playing 2 of the other recruiters, Sangan. Sangan may get a bit less value in this deck. There's only a couple search targets for it. But even if you're just using Sangan to search out Witch, that's still worth it because Witch can then search you into one of your big tribute monsters. Sangan can also search out things like Muka Muka. Muka Muka is really good in this deck because you want to hold on to your Soul Exchanges and tribute monsters. This means that your hand is likely to be decently big at any given time, making Muka Muka a very strong beater. In addition, Thunder Dragons can buff this thing up even more, which is a very nice synergy in the deck. Sangan can also search out Cannon Soldier as well, and Cannon Soldier is really neat in this deck because it can essentially act as another combo with Soul Exchange. Soul Exchange doesn't necessarily need you to tribute for a tribute summon, it just needs to tribute for a tribute. And Cannon Soldier's effect does tribute monsters. So you can summon out Cannon Soldier, activate Soul Exchange, and use Cannon Soldier's effect to tribute one of your opponent's monsters, which is a really neat interaction. We are also playing 3 Login as just an always good beater. You know, Muka Muka is slightly conditional. There are going to be times when you don't have a big hand, and thus this card won't be as good. Login will always be at 1800, which is a very good amount to have. Moving on to the spells, we've got, of course, 1 each of the Power 5, Change of Heart, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, all incredibly, incredibly strong. We also have 3 Fisher to act as even more removal, because if we're playing the Soul Exchanges, we might as well be playing the Fishers, because I think that Fisher kind of does Soul Exchange's job a bit better. Not all the time, as there are flip monsters that Soul Exchange can deal with that Fisher cannot. But oftentimes, you know, you're having to use Soul Exchange on a face-up monster, and it's not quite as good. So I do like Fisher as just unconditional removal in this deck, and so we're playing 3 copies of it. We also have 2 Heavy Storms to clear the way for our tribute monsters. Now, this isn't necessarily as good as in some other decks that can just go into their aggressive push right away. Soul Exchange does require you to give up your battle phase the turn you use it, unfortunately. But Heavy Storm is still just very good in a format warping card, so it's good to play in the deck. We also have 2 Swords Revealing Light, as this deck can suffer from bricking a bit. Not as much as it did in Yugi-Kaiba, but it can still brick, so we want to buy ourselves some time to draw into the pieces that we need to pull off our combo. For the traps, we have a full trap lineup here, 1 Mirror Force, 3 Solemn Judgment. Now you could potentially put in some 7 tools here, because things like Trap Hole, Mirror Force are pretty bad for you, and it costs less than a Solemn Judgment. However, given that you're giving up your battle phase with Soul Exchange, I think that it's good to have a more flexible counter trap that can potentially deal with your opponent's spells that are trying to be used to stop your tribute monsters. So that's why we're playing Solemn instead of 7 tools. We do have 7 tools in the side, so you could easily play it instead of Solemn, but that's why we put Solemn in main. We also have 3 trap holes, which are very good removal tools, and this deck's sort of going all in on removal, so these are good to have. Lastly, we have 3 Wuboku, which is incredibly good at protecting your monsters and your life points. You could maybe cut these out for more monsters like Giant Soldier of Stone, which can serve a similar purpose. But I like having Wuboku in here because it's a bit more flexible, and you can use it to stop the effects of monsters like Masked Sorcerer or White Magical Hat. So I do like this in the deck, although you could definitely swap it out as we are a bit light on monsters. For the side deck, we have 2 Jiraigumo if we want to get a bit more aggressive, 2 Magician of Faith if we feel like we're going to need to recycle some of our powerful spells, like potentially Soul Exchanges, 3 Giant Soldier of Stone if we want to get a bit more defensive, as I said before, 2 Card Destruction to deal with Exodia, 3 Magic Jammer if your opponent's on a more spell-heavy deck, and 3 7 tools largely to bring in if your opponent's also on Solemns. These can be great at negating those. And that is my current build of this deck. I think that this deck is by no means perfect. I think there's a lot of changes that you could make to it. This was just where my sort of philosophy in building the deck brought me to. And I don't think this is very good, so there probably are improvements you can make on it. But let's see how good or not good it is in a game. Okay, we've got a game against Heavy Metal Raider, aka Janzo from the Janjo Zone. So we've had them on the channel before, always a pleasure to have them on. Our duels are always very fun, so I'm looking forward to this one. They are also on a bit of a jank deck, so I'm excited to see how our jank matches up with their jank. This is a pretty good starting hand, honestly. We've got a lot of different things we can do here. Swords is a good draw as well if we want to Swords their set and then Fisher it potentially, but we can just get really aggressive here. We bring out Muka Muka, and they're fine with that. And now we can fire the Thunder Dragon. So we could have fired Thunder Dragon right away, but we felt like firing it afterwards so they wouldn't know exactly how many cards we have in hand. Because they might figure, okay, Muka Muka can clear my set, but then they're probably going to set a card or 2 behind it, dropping it down a little bit. But here, now we reveal that this Muka Muka is probably going to be at least 2100 by the time their turn rolls around as well. So I think that that ordering is pretty good. And we're just going to attack into their set, see what it is. It is a Witch of the Black Forest, so they are going to search a Man-Eater bug, which means that they're maybe on some sort of flip control deck, which our deck is a very good matchup against flip control because we can Soul Exchange flip monsters before they get to use their effect. We're just going to set 1 pass back to them, and they're just going to bring out a 7-colored fish. Try and Fisher our Muka, and that is fine. We don't have any way to deal with that. So we will lose the Muka, and they're just going to attack in with the 7-colored fish. They'll pass back to us, and we have a couple different options here. We could just Fisher away their 7-colored fish and summon out a Lodgin and attack in. I think that's probably the best thing to do, and that is what we're going to do. We could have also just activated Swords now, but I don't really think that's worth it. We're just going to get on the aggressive here. Save Swords for when we need to go on the defensive. And we are going to set the Wuboku here because if they have Heavy Storm, we'd lose Swords to Heavy Storm anyways, and Wuboku can be chained, so we can protect ourselves that way. And they're going to bring out a Lodgin of their own. Activate Heavy now, and then we're going to Wuboku. I think they probably should have activated Heavy before summoning out Lodgin, but I don't think it matters here because we only had the Wuboku there. They're just going to set 1, pass back to us. We've got a Solemn that we can set, and we'll pass back to them. We could have potentially attacked in here, but if their set is Wuboku, which it likely is, then that would be pretty bad for us. So they're going to bring out a Witch of the Black Forest and just attack into our Lodgin. And those will crash, so maybe it wasn't a Wuboku, but they will be able to get in for 1100. They're going to activate Last Will here. We could potentially Solemn this, depending on what they get, but Cannon Soldier can probably beat over whatever they have, so we might as well save it for later. They're going to get a Sangan in defense. Makes sense. They've got another recruiter on field. And then just pass back to us. We draw another tribute monster, which is kind of rough. We would have liked to preferably search those out maybe, but we do have cannon soldiers, so we can get a bit aggressive here if we want to. The issue is if we attack over the witch, then they can search out a beater that can get over cannon soldier. We could attack over the Sangan, which would be a little bit better maybe, but I honestly don't think we need to let them get a search here. So we're just going to set the cannon soldier and pass back to them. And let's see what they're going to do. They're just going to attack into it, and that's fine. Cannon soldier has enough defense to weather that blow. They're going to set one, pass back to us, and we do draw Soul Exchange here, which is pretty nice to see. We can combo it with our monsters. But here's a big reason why Soul Control is a lot worse than Critter. If we use Soul Exchange on a Witch or a Sangan, they get to search a monster. So they basically stay even on card advantage. And we've had to basically use a removal spell that costs us our battle phase and committed a monster to field. So I don't know. It's less impressive as it was in Yugi-Kaiba, where it was pretty much always a minus for your opponent. Here it's a bit worse. So we're going to think about it, and we're going to think about whether we want to actually do that. We're not going to do that. We're just going to switch Cannon Soldier to attack into Sangan, because we figure if they get a Flip Monster or Giant Soldier Stone, we could Soul Exchange that, so it wouldn't be the worst. And they're going to get a Magician of Faith, so if they do set the Magician of Faith, then that'll be a pretty good Soul Exchange target. They're just going to set one, pass back to us, and we will Soul Exchange here, finally revealing that we are on Soul Control, targeting their set, hoping that it's the Magician of Faith. We'll bring out Summon Skull, and unfortunately it's not Magician of Faith, it's Harpy Lady. So it looks like Janjo is on Harpies, which is very interesting. Got a bit of a flip control Harpy sort of thing going on. But we're just going to switch Cannon Soldier to defense, set the Solemn Judgment, and pass back to them. If they have a heavy, then this could be pretty bad, but it's not the worst. I think we want to save this for if they have Raigeki or Dark Hole or something like that, which would be pretty bad for us. They're just going to set two, pass back to us. We draw Raigeki, which is pretty great. And we could just go for the Raigeki. And we are going to go for the Raigeki, because we do know that they have Magician of Faith in hand. We know that they have Man-Eater Bug in hand. So we're just not going to bother with those flip effects and clear away both those monsters. They're going to grab another Man-Eater Bug from deck, so they'll still be able to deal with our board a little bit here. We can attack in for everything, and that's pretty good. They're down to 2,100. We've got Cannon Soldier on board, so we could potentially win in the next couple turns, which feels pretty nice. They're going to Dark Hole here, and we are going to Solemn Judgment this because we don't want to lose our board. They're going to think about it, and they're just going to let that go. So that's perfectly fine by us. They activate Swords, and we could Solemn Judgment this as well if we wanted to, because, you know, just giving them time is not good. And we want to keep on the aggressive here. I think ultimately we're not going to do that. We are just going to let that go. So we are kind of rewarded for our decision here because we do draw Soul Exchange. So we are able to Soul Exchange over the Man-Eater Bug there, setting a Thunder Dragon. And, you know, we're thinking about whether we just fire the Cannon Soldier, because I don't know. I think we can. And we are just going to tribute off the Thunder Dragon. The thing that really punishes this is if they have, like, double Fisher. That would be bad, because then we won't have a monster to block on field. But in pretty much every other case, we'd be fine, because if they have Raigeki, then our board would be cleared anyways if we don't Solemn it. And so I think we're fine doing this. They're going to summon out Lajin. That's fine by us. And they will attack into the Cannon Soldier. So we will take 400, and they're just going to pass back to us. That's perfectly fine by us. We're just going to pass back to them and see what they do here. And they're just going to set a Magician of Faith, pass back to us. And Sangan's a pretty good draw. We can set that and then just pass back to them. They are going to flip up Magician of Faith. And this is something that we do need to Solemn, because they can get back like Dark Hole, summon out another monster, attack in. They can Fisher away our Summon Skull potentially. There are just too many powerful spells in Grave that we can't let them get. So we are going to Solemn this because we kind of have to. And they are going to think, and they're going to 7 Tools the Bandit this. So that's pretty rough because now they can get back the Dark Hole. So, I mean, they might not want to if they don't have a monster to summon out after that. So maybe they won't, but yeah, they are going to Dark Hole here and clear the board away. We will get a Witch, but if they have a monster, and they do have a monster, they have Harpy Lady, then that is the end of the game. You could argue that maybe we shouldn't have Solemned because we had the read that they had a 7 Tools from earlier when they thought about, responding to our Solemn. So maybe we shouldn't have done that. But if that had happened, then I think they would have had other ways to kill us. And we'd be in a pretty bad spot, I think, either way. What's their set? They had a Trap Hole set, too. So I don't think that we'd be able to fight our way out of this. Because if we tried bringing out Lodgin to attack over the Harpy Lady, they would have Trap Holed. So I don't think that we made a bad decision. I think we did what we had to do. And it just didn't work out for us. So that was game 1. Harpy was able to attack in for game, which was pretty neat. It's always neat to see the sort of mascot of a jank deck doing well. But that was game 1. Hopefully we can do better in game 2. We didn't really side out anything because I think our deck is actually well equipped to deal with this. This deck seems more flip control than Harpy based. So honestly, Soul Control is a great matchup for flip control. So we're just going to hope that we can do a bit better here and hopefully manage to pull out a win this game. This is not a good start, though. We do get Thunder Dragon, so we can grab 2 Thunder Dragons from deck, but we have 4 Tribute Monsters in hand. Now, we do have a Muka Muka to go along with that, which is pretty nice, and I think that we will set the Muka Muka. Yeah, we're going to set a Muka, set a Solemn, pass back to them. So that is a pretty good wall, and they're going to summon out 7-colored fish and try attacking in. And they won't be able to get over it because that Muka Muka has 1800 defense. So we're not in a terrible position here, but it is pretty rough for us. They are going to activate Fisher, and we could potentially Solemn this because we don't really have any other monsters to protect against 7-colored fish. However, if they have another Fisher, though, then that would be pretty rough. If they have any other way to deal with the Muka, then that's rough. So I don't know. Maybe we should have, but I think it's probably better not to. They probably have some other way to deal with it later. So we're not going to do that. We draw Cannon Soldier, which isn't really good here. So we're just going to pass back to them. And they're going to attack in with 7-colored. We will take 18. They'll pass back to us. Change of Heart is great. We can activate Change of Heart, take control of that 7-colored fish, attack in with the 7-colored fish, and we will distribute it off for a Summon Skull. Pass back to them. We could have summoned Summon Skull first, but if that was a Trap Hole, it would have been pretty bad. So they're just going to Heavy Storm. We're going to lose the Solemn. They're going to set one, set another, pass back to us. Given that they Heavy Stormed and then just set one, it's likely that that's probably like a Mirror Force or something. That's pretty good. But given that we know they're on flip control, that set monster is likely a flip monster that can get them back. The heavy, or it could be a Man-Eater bug that could pop our Summon Skull anyways. And they could be baiting us here, like making us think that they have Mirror Force that we don't attack in. So we're going to think about this for a bit, whether we want to play into Mirror Force or not. We could just wait a turn, set Solemn, and hopefully get around it that way. But I think we just got to go for it. We got to get aggressive here, given how many bricks we have in our hand. If it is Mirror Force, that's really bad for us, but I think we just got to go for it. So we are going to attack in, and unfortunately it is Mirror Force, so we do get baited into attacking into Mirror Force, unfortunately. And yeah, we don't really have a good follow-up here, and we're just going to set the Waboku, set the Solemn, pass back to them. It's unlikely they have another Heavy. If they Magician of Faith to get the Heavy back, that's not the worst, because we do have the Waboku, so it's fine. They're going to bring out a Lodgin, and they're just going to attack in for another 18, and we're going to take it. Kind of rough, but nothing we can really do here. Fisher is great. We can Fisher away their Lodgin, pass back to them, and they're just going to bring out a Sangan, attack in with the Sangan. And also, by this point, we have the read that their set is a Man-Eater bug, because why would they not flip it otherwise, right? So we're under the assumption that that's just Man-Eater bug, so we're not too worried about that. And we're at 3,400, which is kind of rough. They're going to attack in for 1,000 here. If they bring out a cannon soldier, that could be bad for us, especially next turn. If they attack him with Sangan, we might want to consider just Wobokuing a Sangan attack because a summon of cannon soldier would be really bad here. We draw another Woboku, which makes us feel more comfortable Wobokuing the Sangan attack next turn. And they're going to attack in. We are going to take it, though. I think maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we figured because we have the Solemn and we can Solemn the summon of the cannon soldier, it's fine. But I still think we're playing a bit risky here. They're going to just pass back to us. So luckily, it is not a cannon soldier that we have to worry about here. They are going to just flip up a Harpy Lady. So it actually wasn't a Maneater Bug. I mean, if it was Maneater Bug, that would still be bad for us because they could flip up Maneater Bug, pop their Sangan, search out like a Sangan, summon it out. But this is actually fine because we've got Woboku for this. So we can just Woboku this, not take 27. And they're going to activate Swords, which we honestly don't really care too much about. We've got Heavy Storm if we do want to get in for damage, but we honestly don't need to because we drew Soul Exchange here. So we're going to Soul Exchange, target the Harpy Lady, and we're actually going to set a Summon Skull. The reasoning for this is that we can set Woboku as well, so if they do summon a monster that can get over Summon Skull, we can Woboku that attack and dodge around Trap Hole that way. They are going to Dark Hole this. That's a bit iffy for us. I think we have to Solemn this because then they can just get in for a clear shot on our life points. So we are going to Solemn it, and they're just going to attack into the Summon Skull, and that's fine by us. We get the Summon Skull flipped up to dodge around Trap Hole, and they take 200. They do have a Fisher for the Summon Skull, unfortunately, but nothing really can do there. We've got Soul Exchange, so we could actually Soul Exchange the Sangan. I think that is what we got to do. It feels really rough. We don't want to do it, but I think we have to. And they're going to search out a Maneater Bug, which is even rougher for us. We're going to set the Solemn. Hopefully we'll deal with the Maneater Bug later. And pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Lodgin, and they're just going to attack into our Thunder Dragon. That's fine. We'll lose with the Thunder Dragon, but we're just hoping for something good here. We draw Sangan, so we'll set the Sangan, pass back to them. And they're going to just Reborn a Summon Skull from our graveyard. That's really unfortunate. Maybe we should have actually Solemned this, but I think that's a bit risky. If they've got like a 7 tools, then that kind of messes us up a lot. So they're going to Reborn the Solemn and attack into our set. We are going to Woboku this. We could have Woboku'd after the Sangan was destroyed to get another monster to hand, but honestly I'm not sure what we'd really search. So if we're firing Woboku, we might as well preserve a chump blocker on board for later. But this is a really rough spot for us. Muka Muka is okay. We can use it as another chump blocker, but not the best. We're going to set it. They're going to attack in here. So it looks like it's a good thing that we did set the Muka Muka. And it looks like they're not going to attack the Sangan, which is perfectly fine by us. We've got another chump blocker on board. They're going to set one, which is likely the Maneater, so that way they can pop another monster that we bring out next turn. But we draw Soul Exchange just in time, so we are going to Soul Exchange their set. It is a Maneater, and we'll set a Thunder Dragon here. We are out of Tribute monsters. I think we might be out of... Yep, we're out of Soul Exchanges and Change of Hearts as well. So we've really gone through a lot of our deck at this point. They're going to bring out a Wall of Illusion. We've got to Solemn that because they can clear our entire board this way. So kind of unfortunate, but we had to do it. And they're going to attack into Thunder Dragon, attack into Sangan, clear our entire board. We're just going to get a Witch because there isn't really anything else that we can search with Sangan at this point. That would be useful. Woboku is pretty nice here. We are going to set the Witch, set Woboku, pass back. They're just going to set 2 and pass. So they know we have the Witch. I'm not sure why they wouldn't just attack into the Witch, because then they'd have potentially game here. I don't know, that's a bit weird. Solemn Judgment, or not Solemn Judgment, Dark Hole is great here. We'll just Dark Hole the board away and search with our Witch to get a Lodgin. And now here we could actually Heavy Storm, because it's likely that they have a Trap Hole or something to deal with the Lodgin. They haven't used up any Trap Holes yet. We could also just set the Lodging, but then they know that it's set and could summon out a monster that could attack over it. The issue with heavy storming the board here is that then we lose our Wuboku. And given how precarious a spot we're in, and how many cards they have left that could kill us out of nowhere, like Change of Heart, for instance. If they have a Raigeki or the third Fisher, then we're dead that way as well. I think we want to save the Wuboku here. We still do have 2 more Lodgins left in deck that we haven't used. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to try and bait out a trap hole to save the Wuboku. If they've got a counter trap set for the Wuboku, that's pretty rough for us. But I think we've got to do this because there are just so many things that kill us if we heavy storm. So we're going to bring out a Lodgin, and they will trap hole that. So unfortunately, they did have an out for it. But I think we did what we had to do. They're just going to set 1 and pass back to us. So that pretty much has to be Magician of Faith. And we're just going to pass here. We could Raigeki this because they could get back like Reborn or something. But I think we just got to go on the assumption that they don't have a counter trap right now. And because if they do, then we just lose, right? So we've got to go on the assumption that they don't have a counter trap for our Wuboku and just play it as if that's the case. And maybe that will come back to bite us. They're going to Magician of Faith for a Reborn, and Reborn are Summon Skull most likely. Oh, they're Reborning Harpy Lady, so they can try and get in for game with Harpy Lady. They're going to activate Egotist and summon out Harpy Lady Sisters and just try and get in for lethal. We're going to Wuboku here, and unfortunately they do have 7 tools for us. So that will be the end of the game. It looks like the remaining cards in their hand with 7 tools and Harpy Lady Sisters. So honestly, if we had heavied the board, we could have potentially won this one. We would have Raigeki'd the set no matter what it was to just keep attacking in. And yeah, unclear what our top card would have been following this, but you know, hindsight's 2020, and there were so many things that did kill us that we had to play the way we did, I think. But I think these games show off the flaw with a soul control sort of strategy. In Yugi-Kaiba, which is a much slower format and a much more resource-dependent format, there are less ways to get cards from your deck into your hand. You're able to give up a battle phase, and you're also able to fire off the Soul Exchange knowing that your opponent will not get a search off of it. In Critter format, it's much different. If you have to Soul Exchange a Recruiter, then you're in a really tough spot because your opponent gets to search and out to whatever you bring out on the next turn. Even if you're not Soul Exchanging Critters, as you saw in this game, against what is arguably Soul Control's best matchup against a deck that's playing heavy Flip Monster control. The Soul Exchanges costing your battle phase are still really rough and can give your opponent time to just draw it out naturally. In addition, while the Tribute Monsters are easier to search out in Critter format, you can still brick hard if you don't draw Soul Exchanges, and there's no way to search out Soul Exchange. And I think you really saw that in Game 2 when we just had a bunch of Tribute Monsters in hand and we just had to hope that we drew the Soul Exchanges. And we did draw Soul Exchanges, but by that point our opponent was able to get such a game state that it didn't even matter. All in all, I think there are just too many obstacles facing Soul Control in Critter format to make it anything more than Tier 2 or Rogue. But maybe this is just because I built my deck wrong. If you have any suggestions for how to improve this Soul Control deck, please let me know in the comments below. And if you like this sort of content showing off these old Critter format duels or Yugi-Kaiba format duels or any of these old retro formats, then please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. That way you'll be kept up to date whenever I drop a new video about these sorts of things. But I hope you enjoyed this one as always. Big thank you to Janjo for coming on as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.